You'd think after nearly 3 years of doing Ref Chat, I could manage to work out how to record. Chris.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, how are you?
Yeah, we're well, thank you.
Oh, are we allowed to share the good news?
Yeah.
Grandpa Chris.
Yeah, Grandpa Chris.
Or Grumpy Chris.
Yeah, Grumpy. I even got a new armchair to sit in so I can be a grumpy grandpa.
Oh, congratulations.
Grumpy chair.
A grumpy chair. Every vicarage should have a grumpy chair.
I think so.
I think I better sort one out forthwith. Excellent. Oh, well, congratulations to you on the arrival of your first grandchild. It's lovely.
First grandchild, little boy, £8 too.
Big boy.
Big boy. So yeah, brilliant. Happy days.
That's lovely news. Excellent. So now you've got a new grandchild, new grandson, and we've got a new diocesan bishop.
And we've got a new diocesan bishop.
I think he's a little bit bigger than £8 too.
Yes, and I must admit, Sunday afternoon I went to see my little grandchild rather than the new diocesan bishop.
Did you? You missed out on a tenner then, didn't you?
I missed out on a tenner.
Those of you who haven't heard, I can't imagine how you could have not heard, but in his sermon in the cathedral, as he was installed, enthroned, welcomed, whatever he was, the new bishop gave away, as a result of two very generous benefactors, £10,000 in cash, preaching on the parable of the talents. So the idea being that we don't just bury it in the ground, but we put it to work to the glory of the kingdom. So apparently, and he said at Diocesan Synod, which was 3 days later, that it already doubled in size.
It's good news, isn't it?
It's good news. It's good news. I was chatting to someone at college yesterday about it, and they were telling me that their husband, when they were doing some clearing out a few years ago, discovered a letter with a £10 note in, a similar one from his church from a few years back that he'd clearly forgotten to do, and she accused him of burying his talents.
Well, I suppose that really is burying your talents, isn't it?
Buried in a load of paperwork.
Oh. Hey, maybe if I tidied my desk, I might find something at the bottom.
Oh, don't. I can always tell how busy I am as to how untidy my study is. My study is shocking currently. Anyway. Perhaps I'll have some. Next week is the Beaminster Festival, which means we're out of Beaminster Church for 10 days. And hence my diary's a little bit emptier next week. So I might be able to do some tidying.
And it'll soon be school holidays, and then you've got 6 weeks of time to tidy.
Yeah, but foolishly, I like to fill the school holidays with extra activities, like all our community outreach. Yeah, I haven't worked this one out yet, that actually you should look for a bit of space rather than just fill the time with other things to do, but there we are.
Well, I listened to Stephen Cottrell's on Radio 2 this morning, and he was talking about slowing down, going slow, and how much more you can see when you walk rather than when you drive, and it's time to stop rushing from one task to another.
I need to hear that today, Chris. Thank you very much. I will. But obviously we're doing a short rev chat because I've got to rush off to the next thing.
Oh, intentions are a wonderful thing, though, aren't they?
Intentions are glorious. My husband, who won't be watching this, well, he has to edit it, but I don't think he watches every bit. He would say to me, in 16 years of ordained ministry, Joe, you have not worked out how to go slow. But, leopards they can't change their spots, can they, leopards? But perhaps one day I'll learn how to do it.
But maybe one day, if we've got archbishops telling us that we've got to look after ourselves and go slow and it's far more fruitful in the kingdom by going slower, maybe we should listen.
Well, Jesus has got some pretty heavy things to say in our gospel passage today. Oh, we should explain that David's not here. Well, obviously people have seen David's not here. He's with the new bishop.
He's with the new bishop.
Yes.
And the other thing Stephen Cottrell was saying, of course, he said that Jesus did all of his ministry at walking pace.
Now, that is true. But he didn't have a 15 parish rural team.
He did not.
But I guess he had the whole of Israel.
And the world.
But I'm not Jesus. I did work that out quite early on in curacy. I'm not the Son of God, therefore only certain things apply. Right. Shall we have our pause?
A reading from Luke chapter 9. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set towards Jerusalem. When his disciples James and John saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them. Then they went to another village. As they were going along the road, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said, "Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." But he said, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom." Another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home." Jesus said to him, "No one who puts a hand to the plough and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." Well, there's some tough words.
There are some tough words. As you were reading it, though, I was thinking about him walking from these villages to village. And that, we often think when we read the Gospels that these events happen within minutes of each other, but they can't do, can they? Because first they were in a Samaritan village, and then they went on to another village. Well, that must have been 2 days walk, mustn't it? So
Yes,
these things don't happen like that, do they?
Jesus' ministry was at walking pace.
Yeah.
And it's 50 miles from Capernaum, northwest of Galilee, down to Jerusalem.
Mm.
So although, because I did a bit of research this morning. It says although these is often labelled as the travelling section, because it starts with Jesus set his face towards Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Actually, he stays in Galilee for quite a long time, walking around. So there's not much travelling gone, except he's just changing from one village to another.
Mm.
The other thing I thought was quite interesting, how one village just didn't accept him and criticised him, and he just happily moved on.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, the bit that comes after this, Luke 10, is the sending out of the 70. And he says, if they welcome you, stay with them. And if they don't welcome you, shake the dust off your feet and go off to the next place. And that's quite a challenge, isn't it, for those of us any of us in a stationary ministry, because most of us aren't called to itinerant ministry. We're in parishes, aren't we? Whether we're in one parish or multiple parishes. We don't always have the choice to walk on to the next place, do we?
No, we don't. Like you say, we are in and a lot of the time we're quite dogged and determined that, every square inch of England belongs to a parish. Every parish has a priest responsible for it, or if it's in vacancy, it goes back to the bishop. Mm. So we're all covered with that, and we have that determination to make sure that every space is covered. Joe and I were talking earlier about rural ministry and these little tiny rural churches which pretty much sustain themselves, and how people get rooted in where they are, and that's a good thing. And we're looking after these individual places. And yet, did Jesus do all of that? Would Jesus have just said, go to a big town? Or would Jesus have said, you support me or you don't? I'll just go where I'm wanted. Mm. And we go everywhere.
Yeah. And it's a team effort. I guess, for lots of us, our lives are based external to church. So we might have workplaces where we work, or places where we volunteer, families where we're part of, communities where we're active. And yet again, you don't necessarily get the chance to brush the dust off your feet and walk on, do you? You've got to turn up at the same workplace day by day, and you're within the same family day by day. So there's something about that, how you live out your faith in a context that doesn't change very often, but how you can have that. I guess maybe it's holding it lightly. Maybe it's when things don't go well or you've had conversations that are difficult, it's just letting those brush off you and just picking up and carrying on metaphorically in a different way rather than actually in a different place.
But also I think there's something rich to be gained. The church I grew up in, the Methodist chapel in the village was demolished because it was an unsafe building. I think I was aged 3.5. And they started sharing the Anglican building, which they're still doing now, 45 years later, or 50 years later. And so, of course, when I was a teenager, I remember there was lots of debate as to, well, I don't go to an Anglican service or I don't go to a Methodist service because of X, Y, and Z. And, all the friction we had. And I still remember after 25 years, there was a lady who said, do you think I'd be allowed to receive Anglican communion? And we said, yeah, of course you can. But after 35, 40 years of being involved in all that mess and involved in the village and owning it, actually there's something quite rich comes out of it. It would have been easy, I think, for a lot of people to have, oh, this isn't working, we give up. Let's walk away, wipe the dust off our feet, and we'll just accept it's not worked. But living it for 30, 35, 40, 50 years and working it together, I think brings a richness, which is a stationary ministry rather than an itinerant one. And I don't think Jesus is necessarily criticising that sort of ministry. No. Jesus was just aware that he had to
had a different
divine kingdom throughout the world.
Yeah, so he always had to be moving on.
So he always had to be moving on.
It's interesting, though, when the disciples, I love the fact that they say, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? I mean, first reflection is, do they really believe they have that kind of power? Secondly, that's quite a finite way of dealing with a village that doesn't accept you. There's no coming back from that, is there really? Those of you who watch Game of Thrones, which probably our audience may not be Game of Thrones consumers, but it's like when the dragons come in and rain fire down, you can't go back from that. It's a pretty final thing. And Jesus rebukes them and says, no, of course I don't want you to rain fire on this village. And I just think because, that just because they've rejected his ministry at that moment in time, who's to say that village would not come to hear him again or come to know him in a different way? And it's not about there being, it's only one chance you've got to find Jesus and follow him. For me, that suggests there's always another chance, isn't there?
Yeah.
You're not destroyed immediately. You've got another go. And there's some pretty tough calls for the poor people who want to follow Jesus but feel they have to attend to their lives first by burying their dead and saying farewell to their families. And Jesus doesn't give them a lot of.
Now, I find that rather hard, actually, because of course you want to bury your dead and tidy up. You can't just walk away.
But there's something, isn't it, about that actually, it's very difficult to wrestle with this because I think our human instinct is exactly that we want to tidy up loose ends first. But sometimes maybe the loose ends become the focus rather than the thing that we were going to do next. Perhaps he feels they're procrastinating rather than, that's a bit harsh to call your father's funeral a procrastination, but maybe that's what he's getting at. It's not about, other things are more urgent. I don't know. Hard one, though.
It is. I suppose the example I've got from that was when I was running a company and I handed it over to my employees to go off to train full-time to become ordained. I remember saying to them, look, it's my company, it's my interest that you make a success of it. So give me a call if you want to. I'll support you and help you out for the next few years. But actually, once I'd got to theological college, I didn't really have any interest in helping them. Not that I didn't want to.
No, but your focus has moved.
My focus had moved on.
Mm.
And maybe if I'd spent all that time helping them out, checking up on them, giving them advice, my mind wouldn't have been focused on what I'm doing next.
Yeah.
It's looking forwards, looking backwards sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and actually, if you think about when you have to make some pretty big life-changing decisions, like moving house or moving jobs or starting up again in a different career or something like that, it actually takes a lot of courage to jump because it's quite risky sometimes. And, I can see in myself sometimes think, well, look, I tell you what, it's not right now, but in next year, we'll have another look at it and see if it's right for us then. And sometimes I think, there will always be a reason why taking a big leap of faith is hard. And sometimes we can push it on and on and on, and then we never take that leap. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what Jesus is saying. Sometimes you've just got to jump and go for it.
Yeah.
Even if it feels like the cost is high, but it still might be the right thing.
Yes, and it's easy to find an excuse. Oh, I would do it, but I'll do that, but I would go to church on Sunday, but etc. etc. And maybe actually that's the best message we've got from this passage, and our message from you to you, dear listener, is just do it. See you in church on Sunday.
All right. Thank you, Chris. You can find us where you find us. I feel a bit silly doing this now. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, our websites, Egerdon with Benefits, Beaminster Area Team. It's lovely to have you along with us. Come to church. We'd love to see you. Or watch us again next week on Rev Chat, and we'll see you again very soon.
See you again. Bye. Bye.